Hey everybody, welcome to Carv. This is our weekly wrap where Chris Amato and I sit down and talk about the week that was. We take a little look at how Chris used Carv at Nectar to solve some of his resourcing challenges and get ready for his sales pipeline because he is managing both his own agency and helping grow Carv at the same time. We're going to take a little bit of time to look at the release that we put out last week, some really great new features that help move the needle for our second cohort of beta users. And then we had a really interesting comparison to Maven Link in talks with a user. We were a little bit humbled. We hadn't compared ourselves to an app that good yet, but we'll dive into that. So with that, Chris, you had a good week at Nectar, I heard.
Yes.
Working on a few contracts, solving some problems with Carv. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it was a good week. There were a couple of projects that were kind of in a tentative state for longer than usual or longer than...
As is services.
Yeah, we're just kind of like, okay, we're going to do this. And great, when is it going to happen? Literally like months went by, which is not totally uncommon, but it was like, oh, all right. Great. So it happened and we're psyched and we're going to dive in. And then there's another project which is like starting to mature. And so it's like a good opportunity for us to like do resource modeling and stuff like that.
God, how long is the sales cycle? So 2 months of contracting and then...
Depends on when you start counting. You know, from the first sort of referral from from another business, 6 months.
Wow.
4 months.
And when did you, so I think you first showed me that you were working these guys in Carv, what was it, 3 or 4 months ago you first entered that project?
Yep. And we just kind of watched it kind of drift and tweaked it and changed confidence level up and down over time. But as it's gotten closer, it's been very high confidence until it's really the real deal.
Well, why don't you show it to us? As everyone can see, we do these directly from our amazing green screen setup. We won't lie to you that we're actually in the app, but yeah, Chris, show us exactly what you're talking about. And let me minimize us a little bit so we can see what matters. All right, go for it.
So let's see. For the most part, we're looking, right now we're more or less filtering projects from this view by their confidence level. And so basically we had some 75% level projects that we were able to bump to booked. And what that does is basically it kind of converts it from a tentative project to a booked project.
And that's the CRM terminology, right? That we're talking about the sales confidence level.
Right, exactly. Okay. Straight out of CRM world. So basically we're just checking it off as booked. And what that does is when we go into a resourcing view, in aggregate, and we focus in on like the key service that we're providing, which is like probably in most cases the bottleneck for production and the determinant about whether we need to hire more staff. We go into here, and in this view we can see, right now, all of a sudden we're in a situation where this lead developer is really at risk of being overbooked.
And that's that yellow line, right? The yellow.
Yep. His capacity is roughly 40 hours per week, like clockwork. And now we can see that he's basically like, at risk of being overbooked. And so what that did for us is like, with like a good amount of advance, like we're looking at 3-4 weeks, with like a very compelling story to tell to my other team that is no one wants to overhire. We want to make that decision really carefully, and overhiring is not good. So
so overhiring, like everyone's looking at this screen behind us, and they're seeing you're going well over capacity in this blue, starting in mid-May. But you entered these projects 3 months ago, so you theoretically knew this was coming 3 months ago.
Yeah, we were aware of it, and in theory we could have acted on it sooner. But this is fine. Like this gives us like plenty of notice. And yesterday we like reached out to like a really solid freelancer we've worked with for many years, and good news, he's available. We're going to talk today about like actually like coming up with like a better model that accounts for his availability. So we have a system.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you built Carv.
That's why I built it. Yeah, and
So
before Carv, it's not like we couldn't solve this, and we didn't, and we haven't for years. But it was always like kind of like more blind faith than I've been comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what does the project model look like for this big client that you just brought in?
Let's see. That one is this guy. It's pretty standard. It's like a really straightforward build. Nothing too crazy. But what we do also is actually related to the decision or related to the realization that this guy is really being at risk of overbooking. We're already accounting for like sharing some of that project with a front-end developer.
Mm-hmm.
So normally, if things were slower, it'd be the back-end guy who's more or less full stack could handle both the front end and the back end. But in this particular case, since he's like really like, he's under, there's a risk that he's going to be really like jammed to the point where like he won't be happy, quality will suffer, etc.
Right.
So we're gonna like model this a little differently by including a front end developer who's more of a flexible resource. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
Which that you can get for a good price, get good talent in there, and not just have to take a risk.
He's not even he's more or less full time, but he's flexible in the sense that he can work in different capacities.
Right.
He's kind of like a glue.
Basically, you can throttle him based on what Carv is telling you with a little bit of notice.
Right, exactly. And like the resource modeling we do on an individual level accounts for that. Like he can jump in on this skill set and this skill set, and so we can play with that as another lever.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then the other cool thing, maybe kind of leading into another feature, just like we were talking about, just kind of looking at the teams. Like we really have just two, even though we're a small shop, we nonetheless organize ourselves into kind of teams. And
and this is part of the release. I guess we can dive right into kind of part 2 of the weekly wrap. Yeah. What did we do last week? What did Kyle you push out?
Yeah. So let's see. Right now, there'd been a filter for looking at like the resources by team. So I could filter the resources just by like these different teams. The teams are Unleash the Demons and Group 2. Both incredibly dry senses of humor on the parts of those project managers. But basically looking at this, we can sort of say like, what are the resources on that team and what are their particular workloads, which is great and has been fine.
Great, and he put in there the classic Carv aggregate chart showing you just that team's workload against its capacity, right?
Right, exactly. Yep. So that's been there for a while, but what's new is that I really wanted to just be able to look at this team side by side. Mm-hmm. Not, it's not a competition, but just to sort of say like, is this team overloaded or is this team, underloaded, whatever. Now I can sort of see like, this is now an opportunity to take a look at this and say, can this team handle more? Can we like reallocate or reassign on a team level? That's just as important as on a project level.
Gotcha. That's great. So I was just moving us out of the way so we can see.
Yeah.
So this is
Team A and Team B, Group 2 and Unleash the Demons. And
does this have the Carv feature where if Unleash the Demons is overbooked, you could drag an assignment up and give it to Group 2?
It doesn't yet, and it's an interesting question that we're kind of looking at now. Literally, this just came out. This is like the first like real world tests, in addition to like the beta users that are starting to give us feedback on it too. But basically, what my feeling is that while the assignment breakdown is great, in other contexts, what I really want to see here is like the project. So each one of these blobs, I would like to see as a project, not just as an assignment set.
So we'll toss that one out to you, Carv users. We're allowing you to compare teams side by side. Let us know if you'd rather drag assignments across teams or if you want to reassign an entire project to help balance out workloads across teams. It's something we're happy to work on. We typically want to hear from you.
Yeah. And both could potentially be cool. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Who knows? Eventually we may have both, but let us know which ones you want first.
Yeah.
So what else did we release? I remember this morning I was working on a video and I was intrigued by the feature.
Yeah.
Now, which project are you still doing some assignments on?
Yeah, so let's see. Let me find. I think this one is tentatively assigned to this guy. Yeah, let's go in here. There we go. So here's a scenario where this is another project that's sort of a large build that's probably going to be broken out into a couple of sprints or stages. And we have some options about who to make the assignments to during that period. And so, in thinking through like who would make sense as options for that, I can see a couple of things now. For a while, you've been able to see that the folks that are labeled in the same kind of role color are the ones that are basically like with that skill set. But we just introduced another feature, which is allowing you to see like what's that person's availability during the time frame of that assignment, and that's really extremely valuable.
So looking there at Pavel
looks like he has
77% utilized on average over that period. So he's probably a good choice.
He might be. Might be. Yep.
Well, cool. And that's all out in production now. Yeah. People are using it.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Yep, we're using it. It's great.
That's just awesome.
Yep.
Well, we're at about. Let's keep things moving here. Let's jump back to the project screen and talk a little bit about that conversation we had regarding MavenLink.
Yeah.
So as a lot of people know, we're in that stage where we're looking for our spot in the market because we're doing something a little bit differently. We're doing a little bit of resource scheduling, but at the end of the day, what we're really doing is kind of bridging that gap between sales efforts and capacity planning, which a lot of people out there, they kind of miss a lot of the apps. But when we were talking to one of our strong beta users, they brought up a conversation they had with MavenLink.
Yeah.
And they said they were looking at MavenLink and us, and we're like, whoa, MavenLink, that's a huge ERP/PSA system, and for those PSAs, professional services automation, and the idea being linking your CRM up with your resource management system, with your billing, your invoicing, and they were comparing us to them, which it was kind of flattering.
Yeah.
But essentially, what one of the issues that came up in it was the complexity of using MavenLink to link those sales processes into your resource management and ultimately the project, and they couldn't wrap their heads around putting all that front end work in.
Right, ton of transition costs, complete like wiping out of the infrastructure systems that they had in place. So like transition costs to say the least. Plus ultimately being really expensive and not ultimately substituting all the systems that they have that they weren't willing to give up. So we're being considered for that, which is pretty to sort of really like focus on like the real business pain point for them.
Right. Just kind of a validation on our part that bigger companies than us are attempting to address this idea that to have a well-functioning services business, whether you're a marketing agency or software development agency or PricewaterhouseCoopers or KPMG, you've got to be ready for that sales pipeline. And that's one of the things that we're beginning to work on, kind of give everyone a sneak peek, is thinking about which CRMs we're going to be integrating with directly. And we've had conversations about HubSpot and possibly breaking the ice with that. So if anyone watching is a HubSpot user, we'd love to hear from you, because we are in the process of designing out what an integration with HubSpot would look like, with the idea that if an account manager or someone creates a deal in HubSpot, and again, this goes to Salesforce and Pipedrive, if you create that opportunity, what should that do to this resource pipeline in the background? You should see more of this lighter yellow, which represents that work that isn't quite booked. But ultimately, you see it so you can, as we say, plan for what's likely to happen and be prepared for those other scenarios, which is why we're bringing that connection in. But yeah, so we're right at about the 15-minute block. I mean, anything else from the week, or should we postpone till next?
There's so much to talk about, but I think that was good. I mean, just one last thought would be that we're just kind of, it's sort of just becoming more distilled about the difference between this approach and traditional scheduling and calendaring, and just it really is it's a shift. It's a paradigm shift that it's exciting to see people kind of get excited about it. So anyway, yeah.
Get excited and just moving over. I mean, the things that we've seen, the biggest thing, they just spend less time scheduling.
Yeah.
You don't have to manhandle or use brute force.
Exactly, and just like you end up just spending so much time just like getting those schedules perfect and still not answering any of these questions. So what was the point?
All right, and with that, we're going to wrap it up. If you are interested in joining our second cohort, the second cohort of beta users, we are still accepting applications to join. Go to www.carv.io/register, and you can fill out a quick application. The application is basically tell us who you are, give us your URL, and we'll see if you look like you're a good fit. Or send us a private message on LinkedIn. We're very responsive. My name is Chris Lee. I'm one of the co-founders of Carv.
And I'm Chris Amato, co-founder of Carv.
Until next time, stay tuned.